Time is, are we ready? 12:59. I'm calling the November 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Albemarle County Architecture Review Board to order. Could staff please call roll?
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Mr. Hancock,
Here.
Mr. Matsuno,
Here.
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Here.
Mr. Henningsen is absent.
Thank you. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. The public may access and participate in the meeting electronically. Instructions for doing so are posted on the Albemarle County website at the Albemarle County calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone, both as provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website calendar. This meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it is your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Staff will let you know when the 15 minutes are up. If applicants in the meeting room have team members attending virtually who will need to present, please make that known when you come to the podium. Everyone who is participating virtually, please mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. Do any ARB members have anything to disclose?
No.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that is not on the agenda for review?
Not at this time.
Thank you. There are no consent agenda items today. There are no regular review items today. And there are no work sessions today. Other business. Let's see, minutes for the October 27th, 2025 meeting. Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Can we call the vote?
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
and Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you. Other items. Any board members or staff have any other items? No. All right, old business. ZTA 2024-01 form-based code update. Mariah? Ready with your presentation?
Oh, I didn't connect to the right one. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Mariah Gleason, Senior Planner in the Planning Division of Community Development. Thank you for making your way in today. I realize this is the only item on the agenda in addition to the other business of the ARB, but we had meant to bring this last week and I was sick, so thank you for your flexibility in that and to keep this project moving forward. I appreciate your time. This topic originally came before the ARB on October 6th. In that meeting, staff spoke about the establishment of the Route 29 form-based code, the county's effort to address gaps and problematic aspects of the current code, and from that work, proposed changes that are related to the entrance corridor guidelines. The takeaway from the previous meeting was a request for more information about the coordination with VDOT and proposed changes to street trees and pedestrian lighting requirements. Today, staff will present that additional information, explaining how we arrived at the current recommendations And we're seeking ARB confirmation and support on the proposed code revisions. So to start with the coordination with VDOT, part of both of these requests was to understand whether the proposed requirements are consistent with VDOT requirements. The county is currently in discussion with VDOT about proposed updates, but we anticipate that that's going to be part of a larger and longer discussion that will also include maintenance and whether utilities can be in the right of way. And it might be that the result is not a regulation, but a coordinated policy and agreement. We're still working that out. However, the proposed code includes a provision that does not impede development or site plan approval should there be a conflict with VDOT standards. So these provisions administratively approve and are administratively approved and available for both street trees referred to in the code as landscaping along streets and pedestrian lighting. So in both cases, it's the text states, if VDOT standards prevent compliance with standards in this section, the agent may grant substitutions or modifications. So that is the release valve that we have baked into it. And then going into street trees is our second topic out of 3. The table shown here provides a more clear view of the proposed changes compared to the existing code. Generally, the proposed requirements recommend small and medium-sized trees spaced closer together. And these roads are on roads that are narrower, have narrow cross sections and slower vehicular speeds. The revisions also made the street trees and spacing more consistent across street types to make it easier for developers to design along multiple block faces within the same development. And I'd be happy to speak to the other details in this chart if the board would like, but we'll be coming back to it later in the presentation. As the code facilitates more urban street design, staff wanted to ensure that the types of street trees required are able to be successful in these locations. The root zones provided for street trees are relatively narrow. The 3-corridor landscape strips are 8 feet wide, while all other streets are 6 feet wide. There is an opportunity or the option for destination and local streets to be reduced to 4 feet in width. We don't want to recommend large trees for a condition where the plant will be stressed, where we aren't confident that the tree will be able to reach its growth potential, and if it does, it could result in maintenance concerns. Larger tree, so we want to avoid exposed roots and buckling pavement on these street types. Larger streets or larger tree sizes could be accommodated with a structured soil like a silvocell, but those types of systems that are designed to provide adequate room for trees, for tree roots to grow while protecting adjacent pavement surfaces are often costly. That was also something that we wanted to avoid for developers. In the last meeting, the board also questioned whether small and medium tree sizes would provide meaningful shade in comparison to larger tree sizes. We worked with one of the planners on staff who has a background in landscaping to provide the table that you see here to the right, which provides a list of potential street tree species and their sizes, both in height and canopy. The typical canopy size for each species is highlighted in yellow. The canopy size, and these trees are listed from small to large with breaks denoting what is small, what is medium, and what is large. The canopy sizes of the largest trees being red ash, Kentucky cough tree, and little leaf linden are similar and in several cases less than the canopies of medium and smaller tree species, in which case taller tree species would not result in a greater tree canopy. It's also worth noting that the proximity of buildings to sidewalks and pedestrian paths would also provide shade during portions of the day as the sun moves across the sky. The next couple slides provide examples of urban streets in Virginia that have similar cross sections or relationships between buildings, sidewalks, and street trees. And these are just to look at. This is Arlington and their form-based code area with mixed use. This is on Columbia Pike. And then Virginia Beach, which also has a form-based code. This is in their oceanfront area and different streets along it. If there are, I'm going to stop here and ask if there are any questions related to the street trees and the proposed requirements. We can also come back to this in the discussion.
Thanks, Mariah. Any questions or comments?
No, thank you for providing the additional information, Mariah, and that's helpful to see the canopy sizes noted. I think like Frank and others, I was initially concerned that, you know, the canopy size would be a key factor. I think looking at those, the medium trees, from my perspective, start to provide that range of canopy that might be adequate to provide really extensive shade or preferred for that reason. I guess for maybe discussion, I appreciate on the one hand being sensitive to development costs, but in terms of the ultimate success, longevity, health of both the trees, the plantings, and the pavements, I wonder if we don't want to include any requirements for soil volume. It's certainly becoming normal practice, maybe outside of development, but to provide silvicults or other structures to support tree health and success.
We do have a regulation that gets to a required soil volume if trees are in tree wells. And that's that number is 750 square feet, which we our landscape planners on staff help to come up with that number.
Thank you.
So we do have some provisions for it, but we don't have it for we don't have it along the landscaping strip if it's one continuous planted area.
Is that like an underlying condition for site plan approval like that?
If it's in a tree well, yes.
And that's separate from like a parking lot island,
Yes, that
square
is
footage
separate.
or area required?
We can take a look at it.
I guess one is surface, like, cause isn't there a requirement in that a parking lot island be a certain size to handle a certain size tree? Okay, so that's not the soil volume question Dave had is,
Is
it's not
specific.
in the form-based code, but it's somewhere else in the,
No, the soil volume question is specific to street trees that are planted in tree wells. So that has a standard soil volume
okay,
requirement that is in the form-based code.
okay, thank you.
And sorry for a follow-up, but are there requirements outside of the form-based code for soil volume that would be applicable to the trees that we normally require for our standards, street and parking lot and lot?
No, just the minimum width for a planting island.
Right, because just as an observation, it does look like a lot of parking lot trees really struggle. And I wonder for future consideration if we might want to add soil volume requirements. Because I think what I'm realizing as we're discussing this is just a lot of the requirements we have for landscaping and the expectations we have that it will mature and mitigate factors are also conditional on the ultimate success of the landscape elements. And I'm realizing maybe just anecdotal evidence, all the near dead or dying parking lot trees I see, that maybe we don't have that really addressed adequately.
Yeah, it's a harsh environment.
Any other questions?
Can we look at cross sections for the boulevard and avenue?
Okay, so I might have a slide to that. Let me just pull it up. I'm happy to zoom in to these if need be.
regulation? Are all the travel lanes 12 feet or are they 10?
They typically are 12 feet. That's usually worked out with VDOT, what those lane sizes will actually be.
The case where we have a boulevard with a median,
hmm
would the
Is-
requirements there be the same?
They would be. So you
If the
could,
median's wider?
um, anything between curb to curb could be different, but that would be worked out with VDOT. In terms of the right of way outside of the travel lane, those would remain consistent. But I'm not sure that I answered your question. I don't have a sketched example of what it would look like with a median. We aren't, the previous code required a median, but in the revision, we realized that we really don't have control over where VDOT might require a median, where they might not. So we just kind of removed those requirements completely.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Mariah. Can you remind me what are the potential building heights that develop in the form-based code at the edges of the streets? I know it's not
Sure.
known for sure.
In the core, it's 7 stories with a bonus 8th story if additional affordable housing is provided. In the flex area that surrounds the core, that is 5 stories in height with a bonus 6th story. And then on the edge, which buffers the existing single-family neighborhoods, that is a maximum height of 3 stories. No bonus.
Okay, thank you. And do these street types intersect all of those different areas?
I'm not sure. Let's see if I have a map.
Okay, yeah.
So the 3 corridor does, the boulevard does not. The boulevard is Ryle Road and that does not intersect an edge character area. Avenues touch all of them. The avenues are Berkmar, which are here to the west, and then Hillsdale to the east, here. And then destination streets happen within the core, so they would only exist in one character area, being the core, which is a 7-foot building story, or a 7-story building, sorry. That would, that's a Zoolander quote in there. And then our local roads could intersect any of the 3 character areas as could service streets. Although they probably would not intersect the 3 corridor.
Thank you. And so would the tree planting be decided per development by developer, or is there any continuity of requirement required along the streets?
So the street type is a conversation between the agent and the developer, because if it's anticipated that that street will be carrying, a certain load, like we see with Bond Street and Stonefield, that operates more like a through street that would probably need to be public just because of the capacity that it is serving. I think that would be a conversation dependent on the interest of the developer and the owner and the function of the street. So if it's, yeah, it would depend on the design, but written into the code is the requirement for that to be a conversation. I don't know that we will necessarily have any conflicts in that conversation, but it just is acknowledging that maybe there are reasons for it to have a certain capacity to the street.
Thank you. That's helpful. So in administration, is it possible that over time, different developers would want to plant different scales or types of trees along the same road associated with their development, or is it thought that
No, well, when you say different types of trees, do you mean different tree sizes
I
or
guess, yeah,
different tree species?
I guess both. Yeah.
Okay, so there are requirements for street trees that they can't be monoculture block to block. And uh, so they would have to switch block to block along the same street, or they could offer a mix of at least 3 different species so that we don't get one blight and everything goes down. Just to be more resilient.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Can you pull back up the tree list?
Mhm. Sorry, I have 50 slides. I didn't know
Ah,
what you all would be
forgive me
interested
for
in, so I
Adding 50
am just
questions.
turning on and off for that reason, so you don't have to go through all of them.
Frank, do you see any trees that you think should be on?
That's a good question. Are these the only options or these are examples of like?
These are the options.
What about a ginkgo tree, for example?
Uh, I'm not sure why that isn't on the list. I guess I would question, is that a native tree? Is it able to be in a urban area? I don't have the background to be able to answer that question, but I can follow up on it.
Yeah, there's some applications in town they're really tight where they've used ginkgos because they typically don't have a large canopy. Seems like it would be a good, well, they're slow growing, but
Yeah, I think if there's any way to have some flexibility where, you know, if an applicant brought forth a species or made the case for why a certain species would make sense. I mean, these seem good. I don't, they're not all native. If you want them all to be native, you might want to look at a couple, but I don't think they have to be. There's plenty of good street trees that aren't native that don't cause problems. But yeah, I think this could be a longer list. So if there's just maybe there's something written into it that just says, or as approved or reviewed and approved by staff, or you just give applicants some flexibility. I mean, you might not be able to find something or
sometimes it's a supply issue,
Yeah.
you can't get certain species from local nurseries. So yeah, I like your idea. Some flexibility would be nice.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay. Well, thank you for those comments. And then we will move forward to pedestrian lighting. Pedestrian and lighting in the code refers specifically to fixtures that illuminate pedestrian paths along streets, such as sidewalks and shared use paths, rather than fixtures that light the streets themselves. In addition to questions regarding coordination of pedestrian lights with VDOT requirements, as previously discussed, follow-up discussions raised additional questions about pedestrian lighting standards. Those questions included a request for comparison of the current and proposed requirements and clarification on whether pedestrian lighting requirements could be satisfied with building mounted fixtures. The current code does not have any design standards for street lighting, even though it is required. So the proposed code not only revises instances of street lighting to more accurately cite pedestrian lighting, but it also provides standards for those pedestrian lights to address safety and continuity issues. And it revises the maximum mounting heights of pedestrian lights on those higher frequented streets and residential streets to 15 feet. And with heights, corresponding heights on Ryle Road and Route 29 remaining at 20 feet. And both of those are entrance corridor roads. So in general, the proposed code provides clarification and technical requirements, aligns with the entrance corridor guidelines and the intended urban character, and also avoids overlighting and light pollution. And then to the question of can pedestrian lighting requirements be satisfied with lights mounted on buildings? Building mounted lights, well, private developments could provide building mounted lights that meet the pedestrian lighting requirements. There is typically a difference between lighting the sidewalk and lighting the entrance. Lights on buildings tend to light entrances, which occur at like 12 feet rather than the 15 or 20-foot heights of pedestrian lights. And they're usually aimed at the building. So they're aimed backwards, not forwards. And typically they're lighting architectural features or building recesses, the shape of the building. So inherently there's a difference between the height of the lights that are mounted towards buildings and also what they are lighting. So there's also, and second to that, there's a risk of losing lighting along pedestrian paths if the building is redeveloped. So what once was lit could be dark. And for that reason, we're suggesting that lighting requirements be separate from lighting on buildings. And then that's all the information that we have for you today, but happy to answer any questions.
The minimum foot candle requirement, maximum's
The-
20.
The maximum is 20 across the site. The minimum, I believe the minimum along sidewalks is half a foot candle. I can pull that up for us to look at. Do I do that? Not letting me pull it to the other screen. Oh, could I extend actually? All right, this is the working draft, so please excuse the comments that are in it. And then we're looking at landscaping and lighting section. So for the lighting, the minimum foot candles along streets are 0.5, I'm sorry, along sidewalks and shared use paths is 0.5 foot candles and no more than 3 foot candles. I can make that bigger. Ooh, I'm sorry that you're seeing the comments. Maybe I can. Off, okay.
Are you reviewing this with VDOT as well? They're looking at everything or,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
that makes sense to me from a light level standpoint.
What's horizontal luminance? How would you define it?
That is a great question.
I'm sorry, did not expect to get questions on that. For those very technical lighting issues, I usually have the definitions right at hand because I do not have them memorized. But if there are more questions like that or just that one, we can get get those definitions to you.
We worked very closely with our consultant on these, knowing that we wanted to retain a dark skies friendly, as is the case across this county, while also addressing safety concerns and continuity or consistency along the street.
Very generally, horizontal luminance would be the measurement of the light as it is across a flat surface as opposed to measuring it vertically. But again, we can get you more detailed information on that and how it relates to the other requirements in the code.
So would all of this be evaluated based off of like a photometric drawing at the site plan stage? That they could provide like, they'd be looking at those points along the sidewalk and saying, you know, for instance, yeah, you'd be doing a little bit of math alongside that.
Actually, we are expecting the math to be done for us, and it's just notes on the photometric plan.
Got it. Okay. I don't know that much about photometrics. So.
Any other questions for staff?
No, I mean, I'm glad to hear about the dark skies requirement. And that's just broadly across the county, not just in this code.
That is a desire across the county, and we made sure to be responsive to that in our recommendation, on our proposed revisions as well.
This would be required in commercial areas only, or would it also apply to residential?
This would apply to every development within the Route 29 form-based code area that is opting into form-based code.
Could or could not include residential townhomes. So we would put streetlights outside of residential townhomes.
That is typical of urban areas. Yes, what we want to encourage is foot movement in addition to, well, vehicular movement is already such a staple in that area. What we want to do is make safe paths of travel for pedestrians so that people can age in place and feel free to move about to their grocery store, to their doctor. That comes with an urban character. Any other questions? I have some proposed motions if we think we're at that point, but if not, we don't have to go to it now.
Sure.
Sure, we could review them.
Yeah.
Just to summarize the two motions that are there, the first one is approval of the text and map revisions as presented. The second would be approval with amendments. The one point that I think I heard that you might want to add is to consider allowing additional tree species possibly to be approved by staff or the agent based on special conditions. Okay.
Yeah, I certainly heard that one. I guess a question from fellow board members would be, are you all comfortable allowing small, medium, and large trees in most of these street types? Or do you have any reservations about scale and whether we should require anything larger? Understanding there's soil volume limitations, but those could be addressed in other ways.
I think that's a legitimate concern.
Because I feel like many of these streets are so wide that if we did have the small trees, they're going to feel no real sense of enclosure or street. And I think to create the sorts of scales and streets and the sense of the spot, a typical, well, among a lot of architects I worked with, we think about trying to design to a square, and so if you have a 75-foot wide street, a 75-foot high canopy would give that proportion of sort of enclosure and height. Not that we have to go there, but certainly a lot of, older cities, many of which maybe have lost some of their canopies to Dutch elm disease or other things, but had that sort of scale and grandeur to boulevards and avenues. And it's something that's maybe so lacking in our environment that it seems foreign, and people are concerned about the ultimate long-term care of the trees but I think just in terms of the scale of creating a space that has continuity, character, enclosure, the trees are a large part effectively of the architecture. And I don't know that this, in allowing small, maybe even medium trees for the scale of some of these streets, supports those traditional forms of planning.
That's a good point. I would add, when you add the large trees, the level of maintenance goes way up. And like, you're gonna get that larger canopy, but you're also gonna have to spend a lot of time, pruning it against the building, overhanging, and then, I think the smaller and medium trees, they're gonna take longer, but ultimately, kind of at maturity, would maybe be the better solution. But again, I think it's hard to be prescriptive and say we want plane trees everywhere.
Right.
Because they're, that's what they have in Paris, or, I just think like you gotta leave something up to the applicant, which is kind of the intent of the form-based code of like, what's the most fitting, tree for this condition, this building type, this frontage condition. And sometimes it might be a large tree. I mean, the large trees right now are just in the thoroughfare, right? Which is essentially 29.
Correct.
And we think because of the build two lines that large trees don't make sense in the other road conditions.
Yes, it was because of the build two lines being 0 to 10 feet in most cases, and the smaller planting strip being 4 to 6 feet.
I think the question you're asking really is not about should there be choice, but should there be limitations? For example, can you plant small trees and medium trees together in the same block? And does that work in an environment where you might have 5, 6-story buildings? Does a small tree, which is never going to grow to the same height, never provide the same canopy levels, start to create a really inconsistent streetscape that, and you see it on West Main, right, where they planted trees that are never gonna.
Just if it helps, when we talk about just the heights of these trees, small trees in our code is 20 to 40 feet, medium trees is 40 to 50 feet, and large trees is 50 to 70 feet, if that helps. So medium trees would get to 50 feet, and so the difference that I think is being discussed is over 50 feet. Should that over 50 feet be required?
Or
Yeah.
should under.
Or yes, or in the
should-
flip.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's more on the small side than the large side, so
Or,
is 20 feet adequate?
You're right. I think and I appreciate, Frank, your remarks. I'm by no means suggesting we need a monoculture, or the same tree everywhere. I think, but I guess I would say that I think the highest order of architecture in this development potentially is the street scale and form. If we're looking for continuity in it, in the buildings, I think as local conditions, maybe could, and from an urban standpoint, be looked at as secondary to that. And so there's probably, for my mind, mentioning London Plane Train, there's probably the extra large tree that's missing, the 70 to 100 foot, elm so, and I guess if there's not a adequate room relative to the build to line, I wonder if whether, on some deeper level, maybe we don't have enough dimension in the avenues and others outside of the travelway to support the scale of landscape that might create enclosure. I don't want to flip the whole thing on its head, but I guess so. I guess what I'm proposing is not that would be the same thing required, but I think maybe more prescription of a minimum tree height on some of these roads would be helpful in setting a more appropriate scale for the landscape that can ultimately define the travelway and the overall character and proportion of the urban space.
Maybe it'd be helpful to see the list again, look at the small trees. I mean, I understand, like, someone comes in and plants red buds or something.
Yeah.
And it's not the character that I think.
Shade tree. It's not.
Yeah, it's not the character that that everybody thinks about when they look at these street sections and, yeah.
Well, to Dave's point, if it's a 4-lane road,
Mhm.
right, you're talking about 48 feet perhaps of travelway.
Mhm.
It's the minimum height that then creates that sense of closure as
Yeah.
opposed to.
I mean, I know the paperbark maple is super slow growing. It's a cool tree that might take a while to become that size. Depending on the type of crepe myrtle, you might want to get specific there. Cause there's cultivars that get, 30, 40 feet tall that could function as a street tree. But there's also some that don't get over 8 or 10 feet, that you wouldn't want to use. Trident maple's a good street tree. Same with the ironwood. I mean, they're kind of small to medium trees, really. Persian perodia, it's a cool tree. That's hard to find, but hawthorn, thornless hawthorn. Maybe that doesn't exist. The hop hornbeam, is that more upright?
I cut off the botanical names of all of these, trying to fit it on the slide, so I'm not doing you any favors on this.
And I don't know as much about the hedge maple.
I guess after we survey this, might we return to the street diagrams for a moment?
Yeah. The next section, I don't know as much about yellowwood. The thornless honey locusts, people don't use those as much as they used to. They're kind of messy. Black gum, super popular tree, native. European hornbeam, that's upright. That's a good street tree. Lace bark elm's the one that's not native. They get pretty big. They could be bigger than that and they'll spread out. And then red maple, and everybody knows that one. I don't know red ash. Or Kentucky coffee tree, I don't use that a lot. The linden's a good tree. Linden's almost maybe in the category above. I think they don't get huge. But again, there's a lot, there's, you could have a list twice as long as this. I think there's lots of options around here that work.
So back to your point, maybe just allow flexibility.
Yeah.
I
They
would
can
support
demonstrate
too.
that it meets certain requirements. In terms of consistency of canopy type, how would you do, are these similar, very different?
No, there's a lot of different forms in here. And I think that's all, that's all up to the applicant and the designer to like pick the right one and specify it, single trunk, limbed up to a certain height, thinking about it from a long-term maintenance standpoint. There's a lot that goes into picking the right tree for the right location.
Yeah, and I totally support allowing that diversity of choice. I think my main focus is how do we encourage a greater consistency of scale.
Yeah.
So Frank, it sounded like none of them seem totally out of, like, a lot of them seem appropriate for the various types of roads we're talking about.
I think so. I mean, I think maybe we need to look at the sections and make sure we're not, left with a too small of a tree and a,
But like off of just the little pass we did, the sense I got was like, there wasn't anything that was super dinky that we wouldn't.
no,
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't,
Your point, crepe myrtle could be,
Maybe
yeah.
the crepe myrtle is the only one that.
crepe myrtles are messy too, very.
And I think it could go in every tree and do a pros and cons of each. It's not an easy, like, which one's gonna be the best. I didn't see willow oak on your list.
Oh,
It's a very common tree, but they get really big.
Yeah, but I think so, like the through corridor, the large trees are still listed. I think for the boulevard and avenue, they're both roughly 48 or 50 feet between curbs, over 50 to 60 feet between center lines of trees. So I think if we required at least a minimum of medium trees there, there'd be a better chance at scale than allowing small and or ornamental. Although I don't, maybe ornamental's not allowed for any of those. The destination streets are what, 48? Sorry, though, that's 16, 24, 45 feet apart. Certainly the local streets, I think I would support still allowing small destination too, but I don't know if we just might want to revisit the requirements for boulevards and avenues.
On destination streets and local streets, that on-street parking, which is on adjacent to the street trees, those are optional in both cases.
Okay,
So it could be just that there are two travel lanes and it's 24 feet.
it could just be 24 feet. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the local street, the 25-foot build to range, I mean, that could, if it's that far off, you could have a large tree. You would, it would make sense. The shade would be desirable in that, especially showing like kind of, on-street dining or something, like some sort of,
There just aren't going to be very many instances where you'll see that. Most of these, so the 0 to 25 feet build to range, those are for the edge parcels.
okay.
These edge parcels are already fronting a avenue street, so they would not have a local street. This parcel there might be a parcel in here that has a local street. These parcels already front a through corridor. And then this one is county owned and to be developed as a civic space. So really you're only talking about 3 parcels where that condition will be true.
Mhm.
2 in here, 1 right here, and maybe 1 right in here.
Would you mind pulling up the list of the streets alongside the tree
Sure.
requirements?
Sorry, can you say that again?
It's the list of the street types with the changes that you indicated with the strike
Yes.
throughs and the red text.
I will, just hang on.
Okay.
Oh, that was quick.
I mean, as far as the changes go, feels like they're moving in the right direction in that the calipers are getting more consistent, the spacing is getting more consistent. It's just the question of like on the boulevards and avenues, if the small or ornamental trees are appropriate.
In addition to, if we're moving to larger street tree sizes, would the spacing change as well?
Well, if anything short of large, it feels like if they're okay at 30 feet as a medium or small, you're pulling it up from the, like just raising the floor, potentially keep the spacing the same.
Well, it depends on the canopy, right?
Well, the canopies look to be largely the same in their breadth between the medium and the large. There are those kind of species that get larger than others, but I think my question is more about if we move to large trees, should the spacing go more towards the 40-foot spacing? I agree with you. I think the medium and the small are quite similar.
Yeah, and I think what I'm proposing, anticipating the extent of support would be just changing for Boulevard and Avenue to only medium trees. So that in that case, I think the 30-foot spacing would be reasonable.
Yeah, to me, I hear the concerns, and I think the thing that struck me looking through the list is just that, you know, in the small category, there are trees that are kind of medium. In the medium category, there's some that are smaller and some that are larger. I felt like in general, the intent that most of them would be of that sort of medium scale with some flexibility for the applicant to make a selection that's appropriate. And then a possibility that in some weird condition that street tree requirements could be met in creative ways if there's like a utility conflict or some sort of site condition that we could say, well, there's smaller trees that are also appropriate. Like that feels like the right balance to me in terms of flexibility for the applicant and getting some assurance that what we would get in terms of the street section feels appropriate for that district.
That actually would be really helpful. There are, with our first form-based code site plan, the trees were in the VDOT clear zone, so they required a tree with a trunk that was relatively small. So they had the option of doing a crepe myrtle or a flowering cherry. VDOT decided flowering cherry, not that, and it's a much different tree. But if we had small trees that if they needed to make use of that modification, that we have an approved small tree species that would still deliver a certain shape and size.
Yeah, because I kind of agree with you guys. I did have a little bit of a reaction. It's like if it's really an avenue, like is it really appropriate that it should be lined only with ornamental trees or something like that?
It doesn't seem.
That doesn't seem quite right. But you know, to Mariah's point and to the work of the folks who developed the list, a lot of them seem like they would hit a lot of the marks that we'd be looking for in the medium category. So maybe that's the right balance, is to just raise the floor a little bit.
Strike small.
Strike small in boulevard, strike small or ornamental in avenue. I think they always have the option to go for a larger tree if they prefer. Right? It's just, these are the minimum requirements.
We could state at least a minimum tree size. So that way it could be medium as an actual floor and they could go large without asking for a modification.
What's the difference again between a local street and a destination street?
Destination streets are, there are only destination streets only exist in core areas, and they are the concentrated commercial street. They're 1,200 linear feet and 60% commercial. Whereas local streets are, don't have the same requirements. They're more of that, low, where destination streets tries to be a destination with a high level of activity. Local streets is a lower level of activity. It's kind of your last mile between your, maybe the destination and like your residence.
And can you remind us, Mariah, of the potential width ranges of those two?
They're about the same.
Which
So,
is either the
uh,
24-foot travel lane or
or 48.
40.
So it's not so much the travel lane, it's the travel lanes could be 2 or 3 lanes, just depending on the design capacity. It just has that optional on-street parking on either side, which makes it could go out to 48 or
Okay.
52.
Okay,
Well,
thank
not 52, 50. One more travel lane.
What do we settle on?
I might go back on what I said about the, changing it to at least medium trees. Our list of, our plant list is just so varied in so many categories that we might need to state large or medium trees just to be, a little more clear with developers when they're looking at that list.
Take out small and ornamental for Boulevard and Avenue, so that
Seems okay with me.
Yeah,
I would support that, yeah.
And then just to be sure, know what you're asking for regarding spacing.
The 30 feet, I think, can remain for those.
And would it be large or medium trees or just medium trees on boulevards and avenues?
Oh, I'm sorry, because you're saying these are the list of the trees that are permitted. It's not it's not currently medium or greater.
Correct.
Correct.
It's not medium or greater, and I think there'd be more alignment if we did large or medium. If Boulevard and Avenue, if the desire is to have at least medium trees, then I would recommend using the motion to state large or medium trees for boulevards and avenues.
Right. And then perhaps in the spacing,
The spacing
Gets
would be as
confusing.
recommended by staff, or if you had a different spacing, a desire for a different spacing, then stating that, but this would just be staff recommendations.
so in that spacing column, it would just say staff recommendation. Is that what you're saying? Or you would come up with a recommendation and put it into the table?
I think Mariah was just saying that 30 feet is already the staff recommendation. So if that's what you're good with, you don't need to say anything more.
Great, great. Okay.
Okay.
any other questions? Comments? We'll look at the motion.
And so item 3 would be just revise the table to, for Boulevard and Avenue, allow large or medium trees.
Yeah, it looks like that's
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Great.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed text and map revisions to ZTA 2024-0001 Rio 29 form-based code updates amended as follows to revise the tree type for boulevards and avenues to medium or large trees, and to consider allowing additional tree species possibly to be approved by staff or agent-based on special conditions.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Can we call the vote?
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno,
Aye.
and Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah.
Thank you, Mariah.
Thank you so much for coming
Right.
back. We didn't mean to bring you in today, but I'm so glad that you were able to.
It's good we got the whole hour to talk about the trees.
We needed the time.
Trees.
But
very
it's already
important.
on for the
Yeah.
10th or the 24th.
What's up?
So do we know yet if we're on for the 10th or the 24th? Or
That is the next item on the agenda. I'd like to sort of re-poll the group and see who is available on the 24th. I know that Chris is out. Chris can't make it. Is everyone else still available?
I am.
on the 24th, yes.
Yes, I am. I'm not available on the 10th.
Nor am I.
Okay. Then it sounds like we will have a quorum for the 24th. We really need to have the meeting on that day. We have an item that needs an action on that day. So hopefully everyone's plans will stay as is.
Yes.
So if we don't make it there, our favorite gas station is deemed approved.
Oh, God. Is that what we have to look at?
No. But I think that will be coming back soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stuff.
Sorry,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
The meeting is adjourned. It is, let's see, 2:01. And then we'll hear from you whether or not we meet on the 10th. And then we're definitely going to meet on the 24th.
If we are certain to be on the 24th, we don't need the 10th.
We won't need the 10th. Okay. All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.